I think our job isn't to kind of define or shape. I think it's more to platform and to champion and to chronicle. After St. Martin's, there is nothing that can break, like just nothing. We've done it all. I think try it all. I did everything. The first thing before I graduated, I did every kind of internship. I worked everywhere. I mean, culture is global. And Ibs, I specifically, because he's editor-in-chief, so everything that I do is responding to that. I think there's been a lot in media generally, a lot of people, they've been scared to approach certain things, and they've been cautious, and I think as they should be, and as we should be, but I think there also should be space for us to approach challenging or tricky subjects.
Thank you so much for coming. Yeah, just to introduce myself, I'm Kevin Adam. I run Voices of the Culture, something I started around 9 months ago, where essentially I wanted like an opportunity to kind of give a space for some of the names for the biggest brands that have really had opportunity to get their story heard. So these are people that develop the products that we love, are part of the brands that we love, and also part of the media movements and publications that we love and we've read for years. And so with that, we've had a handful of talks. Our first talk was also at 180 with Katie Lubin, who is the VP of brand at List, a fashion platform. Then we did a talk with Rob Bloom, who is the Chief Marketing Officer of Aston Martin F1 at White City. And then today I'm joined by Kacion, who is the Editorial Director at Dazed. Kacion, so one of the questions that I ask kind of everyone when we start is, what does culture mean to you? So with Voices of the Culture, with kind of the mission of being able to hear from some of the biggest cultural figures from the biggest cultural brands in the world, for you, how would you define culture?
So broad. I think it's what moves us and shakes us, define us. I think it's like the ideas and the idiosyncrasies that we share. I think it's communal. It's not something that kind of exists in a silo. It's something that we all share, which is important to know. And yeah, it's hard to kind of it's a lot of things. It's a lot of things. But in terms of youth culture, I think it's all the idiosyncrasies. It's all the ideas. It's the kind of things that define us, move us, and the shared values that we have, and how we kind of form like livelihoods out of it, I guess. Yeah.
For yourself, but when I grew up I was born in Ghana, then I moved here when I was 6, 7. So for me, I had a lot of different cultures or influential cultures that shaped me. So it was a mix of being from West Africa, but then also kind of being exposed to American culture, and things like Allen Iverson and hip hop were kind of cultures that kind of shaped me. As someone that works in media, I don't even want to just pigeonhole you to just fashion, but just media in general, as someone that is Black as well. What are kind of the influential cultures that shaped you? Like where were you raised, where were you born, and how much of that shaped who you are to become in those cultures as well?
Born and raised in London. I spent
Which is rare.
Yeah, which is very rare actually. That's true. Born and raised in London. I lived in Barbados for a year with my grandma and granddad. Then I came back. So I went to school out there for like a year. I used to visit yearly when I was a kid. But I'm a Londoner and Caribbean, so I'm St. Lucian, Bajan, and Jamaican. Um, and a lot of that defined me. I mean, going to school in Barbados definitely defined me. In terms of my tastes and who I am, dancehall defined me. I think that is like my first kind of uh, ushering into fashion. It wasn't fashion that I was necessarily into. It was dancehall and how fashion was used in dancehall. You kind of like in the culture is something that is integral to it. How you look. And my cousin, she was just like she's she's something. And she used to always go fly out to Jamaica and come back with like all the DVDs and would come back and teach me, who was far too young to be watching and listening to those DVDs, but I was. And we'd learn all the dances, and we'd like, copy like the fashion, and that's what defined me at an earlier point. And then going out as well. I think I kind of have the privilege of going out really young. Like I was clubbing when I was like 13, 14.
With a fake ID.
No, there was 18 plus raves. I don't think that's something that exists no more. There was under 18 raves.
Oh, wow.
That was a thing. So you could go out.
Yeah.
I was in high school. And our friends used to go out, and then, you'd either get picked up by your parents or you'd find a bus on. So that defined a lot. Pop culture. I was obsessed with just popular mainstream culture. The VMAs, the red carpets, the performances. I'd stay up like late, or like when you could, when it got a bit later, you'd be able to stay up late and get the first kind of clips on and like Mr. World premiere. Before that, you just wait until like MTV aired it, and just wait until you could watch it. The VMAs in particular, the MTV movie, any of them, MTV Movie Awards, the EMAs, VMAs, BET Awards, any award show where there was a red carpet and those performances, I was obsessed with. What else helped? I mean, those are the main things. And then Central St. Martin's. St. Martin's defined a lot as well. They kind of put it all together.
Yeah.
I think everything before St. Martin's was all kind of isolated. And then when I went to St. Martin's, it kind of brought it together.
Yeah.
It's a wild place where like you, like, I always say lingerie was day wear. Like that was a day wear at St. Martin's. That was what you wore. I remember when we went out to this club night called PDA, and Ib came and turned up in a dress, a wedding dress. That's just casual. You just turn up in a wedding dress, and that was the kind of community and culture I was in. So that, with everything else that I had, it just all became.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we'll touch on St. Martin's and kind of like places that you were at before. In terms of like, as someone that works in media and works at Dazed and worked in media previously as well, what kind of role would you say plays a part in, what kind of role does media play a part in the cultural trends that have defined for the past 60 plus years? Maybe specifically in Dazed as well, if you want to speak on that. What kind of role has that played in the cultural trends that we live by like every single day?
Controversial, maybe naughty of me. We do define. I think our job isn't to kind of define or shape. I think it's more to platform and to champion and to chronicle, really. And things do happen out of that, but I don't see our job, like personally, I don't see our job as kind of like defining youth culture. Like the youth define it. That's like that is theirs. It's like they exist, and that's what they do. We just kind of keep our fingers to the pulse and we chronicle it. Like my job at Dazed, for me personally, is to just document all that is happening in youth culture, as authentically and as nuanced and as well as I can. That's all I want to do. That's all I think I should be doing. But then there are instances where um, it does impact things. So, for example, I was thinking about it today, and I mean, maybe she wouldn't agree. I don't know. I doubt she'll see this or whatever. But when we did the Doja Cat cover, and I did the interview, so we were sat down, and I was speaking to her, and you can tell she was just so frustrated by like just everyone kind of defining her and telling her who she was and who she wanted to be, and she wanted to kind of just break away from that. At the time, she was speaking about doing this kind of punk rock album. That was her thing. She was like, I'm not rapping. Like, I'm not going to do any of that. I just don't want to be this pop star. It was just after the Say So thing. I don't do any of this. I just want to do my own thing. Like, you can't tell me I'm a pop star. I am who I want to be. And so she was like, I'm inspired by this and that. It was all these punk rock things. I mean, that's why the cover was so like punk rock, because she's one of the few stars that joined our creative cause. I remember I was in Milan, And then Ib texts me like, "You gotta join the call because like she's joining. Like she's gonna actually join." So we all had to be there, and she's very like she knows what she wants, and it's not like bossy or domineering. She was just like, "I love this idea. Like this is how I'm feeling. This is how I'm thinking. I love this creative. Like this is my vibe. I'm dressing in this." And then the cover came out, and we kind of responded to everything that she was saying. The cover came out, and of course, I don't know if everyone's aware, there was a whole kind of devil accusations because she was making certain like shapes of her body and blah 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 blah. On set, she was just dancing. She's a dancer. She's a very good one. So she was just naturally moving, and it's really funny being behind the scenes of certain things like that because I know when you're growing up and you're watching like the Beyonce and Jay-Z like YouTube videos of like
What are you living over there?
right. So it's interesting being behind that because I mean I see she was just dancing,
Right.
and I'm sure I mean sometimes who knows, but some of these things she was just dancing,
Yeah.
and there was nothing devilish or anything about it. But that was a critique, and then obviously we didn't get a punk rock album. We got Paint the Town Red, and all of a sudden she's a devil.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to say that we like were the reason for it, but kind of at that kind of impact, like that kind of the magazine cover and the response to it, it all, from what I could see, led to this entire new era that she has done. And things like that can happen. But I don't think we define that. We can play a part in culture, but we don't really define it. I don't think we do.
Are you more like then like the platform or the loudspeaker to whatever's going on around the world? Are you not like you're not puppeteering what's like culture? You're just almost a mirror to culture to a certain degree.
We just want to reflect it. That's all. And championing and platforming people, and telling those stories as broadly, as globally as we can. I don't personally, I don't see myself as kind of dictating what is hot and what is not. It's all just my opinion. It's like Ib's opinion, it's Dave's opinion. You look at tell me it's shit if you want, and that's okay. I just think we're just kind of, we think this is cool and we think this is like something that's interesting happening in culture or represents youth culture. So when we're making the magazine, for me personally, I always think in 10 years time, like we look back and be like, oh my gosh, like I remember this, and it kind of captures a moment or an era. So when you look at that Clint cover, you think of this entire era. You'll think of Cortez, you'll think of everything. Or when you look at the Doja Cat cover, you'll think of whatever, and you look at the Cleo Soul cover, and that's like her first ever cover. It will capture that moment of her kind of stepping out into media and her doing concerts and blah 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 blah. So yeah.
Is that what I kind of get what you're saying is that something a bit more of like speaks on like your taste level, maybe Ib's taste level? Is that something that came from you going to St. Martin's or wanting to go to St. Martin's, and then because I want to pivot now to talk a bit about your career journey, was it that taste level that you had with that, or that perspective that you had that led you into working at these different kind of companies? And can you speak on if it was that, if it wasn't that, where did you end up in terms of career-wise to lead you to become the editorial director at Dazed?
I think St. Martin's refined things. It taught me things, refined things, but a lot of it was there. I think it was the same when he talks about everything. It's always like when he was growing up, he used to watch like BBC and it was all like the news. He was obsessed with that. And so that's why a lot of his work, you'll see a lot of kind of political commentary. And people used to like always critique him for using guns. And it's like, he grew up in a war-torn country. He fled civil war. That's what he knew, In the same way that a rapper might say, that's what I knew. We were selling drugs. We were selling drugs. Like people were getting stabbed. That's the same thing with him. And it's the same thing with me. Like it's just what I know. It's been refined by St. Martin's. But everything you see is what I know. And I think going on to St. Martin's, it's a wild place. It's a wild place. And they kind of like, it's like they just throw you out into like the gladiator's den and just watch you, And they might like throw you like something here and there, but like you just got to figure it out, which is it's not for everyone. People drop out, people can't do it. And
very fight or flight.
It's fight or flight.
Right.
You know, I developed anxiety definitely from St. Martin's. Like that was not something I had before.
Which
St.
is good
Martin's.
if you're going to work in the fashion industry, because have a bit of anxiety.
I mean, exactly. And I always like, there's nothing after St. Martin's. There is nothing that can break. Like just nothing. We've done it all. I remember they sent us to Fashion Week and we're like, right, so you've got an assignment. You're going to be graded on this. You've got to go to the show and review it. And we're like, okay, so like, where's the tickets? They're like, I don't know. You tell me, go and get it. And so you'd have to go around like begging people, or someone would have an internship, or if you were lucky, you knew someone in second or third year that was like interning out there and they could like get you backstage, or you broke in and you lied and said you worked for so-and-so. I definitely lied. We're going to a party. Which party? We're going to a Paco Rabanne party. I lied and said I worked for British Vogue. And they believed me.
No credentials.
None. I was like a first, second year student. Just lied. That's the way to do it. Just lie. It's a party.
Is that the main takeaway from this?
Just lie. Just lie. Just lie. Yeah.
But I suppose, I guess kind of goes to my next question. What is the essential elements to have for your career? Is it lying? But what is the essential elements that you need to become kind of the steps that you take from working in, you worked in Bottega, you worked at Goat, you worked at other publications. What are the essential elements that you need to kind of keep on progressing?
I think try it all. I did everything. The first thing before I graduated, I did every kind of internship. I worked everywhere. I was also working retail, just like working to make money. But I did PR internship, I did a content internship, I did styling gigs. I remember, so Sam, who does New School Agency now, I remember he called me up one day and was like, can you just like go and assist like Mobalaji, who he represented, still does, but at a different agency before. And I was like, sure, knowing full well I'm not a stylist. Can I do it? Sure. I've assisted it before. I've done a styling assistant. I assisted Jason Hindley back when like Nazim Azar was a thing. That was one of my first things. I think I just hit him up on Tumblr, I think. But yeah, and you know, and so we went to this. It was a Missoni thing, and I got there. I had no kit. Just got there like shorts and like t-shirts. Like it's in Sardinia. Like sure, I was gonna have a bit of holiday. And then I get on set. He didn't tell me anything. So I get there. I get out, and then the model comes out, and it's like this male model. Then there's like a lot of like fuss because the model comes out. It's like Bella Hadid, and I'm like, oh, so this is like a big thing. It's like the campaign. And then, but it was like a 3-day shoot. And I think on the second day, Mobalaji turned around to me and was like, all right, I got to fly back and like do something else. So like, you're good from here, right? I'm like, sure. Sure. You just got to figure it out. Yeah. And so now like all these different experiences that I had, so like from the styling to the PR, to the content, to whatever it is I could do, even helping Ib when he graduated. And he had a crazy journey. Like, and we just done so much different crap. Even though I was a writer, and I knew I was a writer. Yeah. But now, in the position that I'm at, all of these things come in very, very useful because I'm able to work across the different teams and understand how a shoot works, understand like what a good visual looks like, working with it and working with all these different stylists, and also assisting. So it all kind of does, you just got to make sure you're doing a bit of everything. Don't restrict yourself until you kind of know this is what I'm going to do. Right. I could get into, I guess, the whole journey up to now.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it'll be good to know, like, almost like snapshots of, Bottega, anything that kind of calls out to you. Because I think Bottega is interesting because it's a fashion brand, but then you're working on the content side of things for a piece. What was your perspective when you were going into that? What was the task, and what was your interpretation of that as well?
Okay, so when I graduated, I worked at Grazia for 6 months, and I had just come out of St. Martin's. I'd made a magazine called Dick Print, and it was like about sex and fetish and the relationship between clothes and sex, and some people wanting to put clothes on when they're having sex when you should be taking the clothes off. Right. So that was what that was all about. And I went to Grazia, and it was like Kate Middleton and like, just really glossy things. Yeah. And so that was an experience, and it was one of the best experiences because it was a weekly. So the kind of the rate of work was like intense, but I learned so much.
Was that a conscious decision to move there?
It was a conscious decision, but it was also I've graduated and I've been offered this opportunity and take it. Like take it. So I took it. And then it was at the time it was with a mentor, Kenya Hunt, who's now editor-in-chief at Elle, who I can't remember what she was at the time. Well, she was at Grazia at the time. And she said she has a position opening up, fashion assistant. So I went there. And then a little bit down the line, she was like, like, this is all great, you're doing well, but like, I know, like, this is, like, where do you want to be? Like, what do you want to do? Like, don't feel like you have to stay here. Like, find what you want to do. And I was like, yeah, you're right. She was like, if you don't want to renew your contract, like, don't. Like, let's find you somewhere that's good for you. I was really grateful to have that support from her to this day. I was texting her literally this morning. Um, and so I was like, sure. And I didn't renew my contract in like November 2019. And then I was ending, basically my contract ended the week of the pandemic. That was my last week, was the first week of lockdown. And so my alternate universe is that I was going to go to Evening Standard and be a fashion writer there for a newspaper, but that didn't work out because of the pandemic. And so I went freelance for a year and I got like my first cover with Luncheon and I did a lot of work writing British Vogue. I did some things online. And that's kind of where I honed a lot of my writing skill post-university as well. And then I got randomly reached out to by my old boss at Bottega a year into freelancing, fortunately. Unemployed. I say freelancing, I was on universal credit. But I could like survive because it was the pandemic, there was nothing going on. And I was living at home as well, which was obviously helpful. And so when my old boss reached out to Bottega, I actually told him that I don't have experience with this and I recommended somebody else. And he was like, okay, great. And then came back and was like, no, like you know. And so I was like, okay, sure, I'll interview. Because like the role initially was like for someone with 6 years experience. So I was like, I got that. But then he was like, no, like we need someone young and like more creative and we want you to interview for it. So I did and I got it. And I was working there during the pandemic 2021, during the lockdown pandemic 2021. And so I was doing a lot of copywriting there, which was different. I was more used to doing creative writing, or not creative writing, but just writing. I wasn't used to doing copy. It was more journalism and stories, features. And then that was like an interesting experience because I got to travel a lot. The offices was in Milan. So I was back and forth between Milan. We went to the now infamous show in Berlin. Yeah, that was a thing. I was there. And then
What happened there? Like anything that you can't talk about?
it was just a party, but it was during the pandemic.
Okay.
So it got a lot of flack because, but I mean, in their defense, they did rent out the entire like Soho House. Like the whole thing was just that, which you could do because it was a pandemic. No one was there. And yeah, it was a bit of a naughty one. It was like, yeah, there shouldn't have been parties, especially in Berlin at the time, but there was. And Virgil DJ'd actually, and it was it was a whole thing. And then towards the end of that, I would have had to move to Milan, and also with working in-house at a brand, I wasn't allowed to do things on the side. It was like, if you want to write on the side, like you'd have to ask us. I didn't like that. I wanted to have a bit more freedom. And I wasn't sure I was ready to move to Milan either. And so I mean, fortunately at the time, I had people that were trying to reach out to me and get me for different jobs, and Goat was one of them. And so I thought, okay, let me try Goat. And I did that for 3 months before Ib messaged me and was like, I would love for you to join. I need an editorial person. Yeah. And so I was actually trying to leave fashion at the time. Some of our discussions were kind of around, well, one, what it meant to come back into the belly of the beast. Because like, not only would this just be going back into fashion, but it would be going right into fashion, capital F. So that was one thing. And then also, because of our relationship, I was very kind of conscious of what that meant, and me kind of being plucked from obscurity and everyone's opinions of that. I just knew what it entailed, and I was just like, I don't know if I can just. I just want to do my work in peace. I'm so used to being in the background. This is a very front-facing role, but I took it and don't regret it. And I kind of had to spend a lot of time proving myself. But yeah, I'm here. I'm still here. I'm still here.
And I feel like moving all of that and then you end up at Dazed and looking at all of the features that you've done and everything, it seems like you have a very broad stroke in terms of everything that's in Dazed, right? So you're either speaking to Zara Sultana, or you have something with kid astronauts, or you're doing something with bikers in Sao Paulo, and then you do some fashion stuff as well, and then you do Rosalia and you do Doja Cat. Is that like a conscious decision that you're making?
Yeah. I mean, culture is global. And Ibs, I specifically, because he's editor-in-chief, so everything that I do is responding to that. He's so global. And everything needs to kind of have that vision. So even when, for example, my editor's pitching stories, if he's like, oh, there's this, I don't know, this clown school in Dalston, I'm like, find me that school, but in like Sao Paulo. Or find me that school, but in like Marrakesh or Delhi or somewhere that is, not here. Because I want to make sure that we're getting different parts of the globe throughout this. And also with the magazine, the way that I do it personally is, which is going to change this next issue, but it's like a feed. So whenever we start the issue, whenever we go through an issue, I want everything to feel like it's just jumping around, which sounds like chaos, which is also, it is a bit chaotic, but that's also how our minds work, one, but also I think that's how we get information. Like on Twitter, there's no kind of real rhyme or reason. There's an algorithm, but it's catered to you, but it's also just anything. So you could be on Trump in 1 minute, and then you could be at like trans rights right under it, and then underneath that it could be like diggity, and underneath that it's like it just and you get like little burst information. And I feel like that's what a magazine should be like when you're going through it, like a timeline.
Yeah.
And so you can jump from like new wave Indian cinema, and then you can get Doja Cat, and then you can get I don't know, we did a story about the Iranian morality police and the protests that were happening around that, and then the Abaya band cover, and like that starting up a conversation. And then like we have a story where we crossed the border in Gaza, and that was like a year ago now. And we do all these different stories, but then we can also do really silly things like in this next issue, inside, it's a sports themed issue. And inside there's a story about dating, because to me, dating is an extreme sport.
Right.
And we can do that. And like that is, it's so unserious.
Yeah.
But we can all have all of those different stories in a magazine. Because it should be like that. It should just be kind of expansive and a bit fun and just a bit silly.
Yeah. What are like your cultural reference points to like get those to everything that gets packed into like the Dazed magazine? What are those cultural reference points that you have?
I think we just always need to respond to things throughout culture. I mean, I read my newspapers, so I'm always getting just the general news, but I think there should always be politics in there. It's very defined by music, what we do. A lot of the cover stars that you see will definitely be musicians, just because I think music captures so much of culture in like one person or like different genres, or you can get so much from that. And I guess we just want to make sure that it's got a breadth of information and touches on different things, because we don't want to be like, you don't want to be pigeonholed. We want to have a bit. And I think people also are, like young people, that's how they're consuming information now. They don't want just things that are like one thing.
Yeah.
Or if they do, they go to that place that has the one thing because that's what they want. But I think when you come to Dazed, you're wanting a bit of everything. And hopefully they get that. And I also want people to be able to go through a magazine and think, okay, I've come for, who's on the last cover? Oh my God. I've come for Victoria Monet, but then I've also got like this portfolio of like fashion designers, or this portfolio of like cool Londoners, or I'm going to get like Brazy is in that issue, or like Zeno Vinci is in that issue as well. And so someone that loves Victoria Monet might now discover Zeno Vinci,
Right.
or vice versa,
Right.
Which is cool. And that's also why we have different covers. So when you have the Abaya band cover, you also have Cleo Soul,
Right.
or for our Beyond Borders issue, you like the Jungkook obsessives will buy a Jungkook cover and then see Spice. And I love that. I love that you would pick that up. and then have this spice editorial. And that's so funny. Or Rosalia, it's all in the same issue, and then Quen Blackwell as well. So you can always get different things. There's something for everyone, and all of these different people are reading this one thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking, are you like tapping into when you do the multiple covers at Dazed?
Mm-hmm.
Are you doing it to tap into different subcultures, or is that a mindset of like our brain is a thread, so we're not like just stuck in this one, like you love grime and diggity, so that's it? Are you trying to almost expand people's outlook on things, and like you can love this, but you can also think about this as well?
Yeah, and also just offering it all. It's like it's there. If you want it, if you don't, at least it's there. I feel like that's also a very St. Martin's thing. And that's also a very like, it's just how Ib's mind works and how my mind works. And that's also why we work together so well. And Gareth, who's the art director, we're all very eclectic. And so in the same vein that, for example, the Rosalia issue, like I'm obsessed with Rosalia, but I'm also obsessed with Spice. Like that was 100% just me being like, we need to put on the cover, especially for an issue that's beyond borders, and it's all these like Rosalia, who is obviously Catalonian, but has a large Latin American presence, and Jungkook from South Korea, from like the biggest boy band, BTS, and then you have Spice, who is like the biggest female dancehall act in the world, and also is the first dancehall act to have a Dazed cover, and she's a black woman, which is incredible to me. And they're all in this sequence of like beyond border covers, which is great, and I want to showcase that, and I think that's just the best. That's the best thing for me.
I feel like going specifically into your role now as like editorial director, I feel like maybe you can speak on it. How much has that like role changed from when you were in university studying and potentially becoming there versus what it is now? I feel like TikTok wasn't a thing by then, so you weren't thinking in that mindset. In your mind, how much has that changed, and what is it right now? What's it going to be in the future? That role just seems like it's kind of like ever growing. Can you like touch on that a little bit?
You're right. TikTok wasn't around. Instagram was around though, and you could see how that was impacting things. But I also think what we do at Dazed is kind of counter that. There's two things. We have to like a lot of young people are interacting with things online on digital media, and that is like number one is valid. Number two, it's like that it is what it is. So how do we work with that, and how do we kind of engage with that in print media, in a print form? That's something that we're always thinking about, and how do we incorporate that? So with Quen, for example, Quen on the cover of the Beyond Borders issue, she's like huge on social media as this comedian and this kind of viral TikToker, basically. And Vine, she was a Vine star actually. And how do we kind of put her in in like a new way? Like on this cover, it was like her. How do we respond to her? So like in the cover, she's actually in a hearse. People don't realize it, but if you see the whole story, we had her driving around this like racetrack in Paris in like a hearse, and she's posing. So the whole thing is like the glass back at the back of a hearse, but there's no coffin, it's just her. And so the cover looks like she's just like in some glass, but it's her in a hearse, which is also very her. It's quite weird and like, why are you doing this? Very her. And then also, I think the one thing in terms of there's a responding to online thing, but also going against that, we also look at very old school magazines, and we love that. We love like Nova, we love like the Color magazine, and we try and bring the Esquires, we try and bring that old essence of print to today also, and kind of stick to that, because I think it's print is still a very valid medium, and you can kind of merge the two. And there are ways we go around doing that, of course, but like I won't say. I mean, like, no, naughty. Like it's my secret.
Secret.
So yeah, hopefully we do it well. But it's definitely something that you do have to consider.
Yeah.
I'm always thinking about ways. For example, I started the Starter series in Dazed, which is like a place where it's like I don't feel like I can give you like a large DPS or a few DPS stories, but I also feel like you deserve something, but maybe you're not quite there yet. But I kind of want to put you somewhere where on the rise, And that's what Starters was. And it's just like a form, which is like a passport form with like a selfie and then them answering questions about themselves. And like you can see um, like some of those names and faces eventually go on to get like bigger stories and then, go on to do bigger things. Or like a photographer starts off like doing, on Starters and then they shoot a story for Dazed. Or, like Arlette, I think she was one of the first people in Starters, and then she went on to do like the Kendrick Lamar costumes, and she did I think the Travis Scott album with all the belts and the hats. She had her own like exhibition, and then she got her own story. Like I think two DPSs, two double page spreads, so 4 pages. I'm using lingo. 4 pages in the magazine from Starters, which was just one single page,
Right.
and that was maybe literally like a year and a half later, she was in her own spread from Starters, and that's kind of what I love. Like, how do we get like people that are doing great things online, like build them up and put them in print and kind of validate them in that way. There is still something validating about print to many people.
Yeah.
And we just love and respect print. So we make sure we honor the old school print format, but also honor what's going on in culture generally with the online things. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's an amazing medium that there's just something about like something that's tangible and you can like hold it and like you can touch and stuff like that. And so that goes to my one of my last few questions around, someone that your role is basically to tell a story with every feature. For anyone that maybe is in the media space or wants to be in the media space, what are like those key elements that you need for a compelling story? Like, what are the key things that you have in there to ensure that you're always telling a compelling story from yourself for Dazed, but also for anyone that's listening here or will be listening afterwards? What are those things that they need for a compelling story, something that's really interesting?
Some tension. I hate having a story that's just too like glossy. It's just boring. I don't want to read that. So I think to tell a good story, it needs to be nuanced. It needs to be authentic. It needs to have some tension. And that's why I also love the naughty stories. So like the Azalea Banks story, we had to fight for that. Everyone was like, oh my gosh, you can't put Azalea Banks on the cover. Oh my God, it's this, man. Blah, blah. And we had to fight to put on the cover for valid reasons. I don't want to make it seem like she is, a saint, because she isn't.
Yeah.
But that is the point. The point is that she isn't a saint and she has said some really problematic things, but she also still holds like such a large space in youth culture.
Yeah.
People revere her still. Why? What is it? And how does she kind of manage to go around that? And you want to approach that because there's that tension. Because she is a brilliant artist and all the other things that people are attracted to about her. How do we kind of balance that? And when we did the cover, we kind of did this tongue-in-cheek cover line, which was America's Sweetheart, because obviously she's not. But it was just funny because she's kind of she's just there sitting in this, I think it's like a Brooklyn brownstone and like through the window, which is very New York, very her smiling. And she's obviously just this like just no naughty girl, She's so naughty, and it's provocative, yes, but the story itself, it kind of balances that, and like the tensions of, well, she also has mental health issues, and she's also been on the receiving end of abuse herself, and it's again the nuance and the tension of how do we do this, and there's also someone that we have coming up on this next cover that I'm sure is going to be equally as controversial, but again, it's this thing of how do you kind of approach this? I think there's been a lot in media generally, a lot of people, they've been scared to approach certain things and they've been cautious. And I think as they should be and as we should be, but I think there also should be space for us to approach challenging or tricky subjects, especially in youth magazines, because kids are not idiots. We don't have to feel like spoon feed people like these kind of glossy, like, here's Beyonce, here's Rihanna, these really lovely, beautiful, unproblematic people. Love Beyonce, love Rihanna. But like Azalea Banks is challenging. And this next person on the new cover coming out is challenging. But they're also pivotal figures in youth culture.
Yeah.
And so we can't necessarily ignore it. And the same way that Time will have Trump on the cover, and they interrogate that. Why can we not do that? It's journalism.
Yeah.
This is journalism. I think that's what we should be doing more of and approaching those subjects, which sounds really kind of like edgelordy. I'm hearing myself, man, you sound like an edgelord. But we're not. It's just journalism. It's like there's something going on in the culture that you want to approach. So you approach it. Certain things we don't touch. There's been people that have tried to come to us about covers, and I'm like, wouldn't touch it.
What is that? What won't you touch?
If there's certain things that I feel like, for example, there was someone that had recently put hands on someone, and it was like just completely ignored, and I can't, like I just, it was too, you know. I think when things get to that point, yeah, certain things we can't, like maybe it's too far, but there's like a line, and how do you toe it? I think the people um, that we have gone there with, there's some kind of a, um, I don't, yeah, there's like a bit of a tension, and it's not gone to a place where I feel like you can't approach it, um, or approach it in a way that is manageable. Sometimes you can approach anything, but like it just becomes unmanageable sometimes if someone's done something that's just a bit too, or if they're a lot older as well. That particular person was a lot older. This person in the next cover was literally a kid, as an underage when these things were happening. So yeah.
My final question, and then I'll pass it on to if anyone has any questions for Kacion, as well, just to hear about his career journey. Any advice for anyone that wants to be part of the media space? I don't think you're not hiring right now in Dazed, are you? Maybe, but not in print or digital. For you, who is your voice of the culture? Who is someone that or who are some of the individuals that you view as, have a really strong perspective on, it doesn't have to be in fashion or media, but someone that you look to be like, I wonder what their point of view on this thing is. Who is that person for you, or those people?
My friends, my close friends, I always ask, like, whenever we're doing something, because sometimes I can be crazy. I'm like, is this too far? Like, I'll be turning the line a little bit too much. But I'd ask my friends, and then just people that I see doing great things. Generally, like in the more general community, like in London, there's people doing so many amazing things. Like, I mean, Jojo of Recess, I just like respect and just love what he's doing. Sheni, Native, respect and love what he's doing. I think it's so important because it's like he's making a days for like Africa and for West Africans, and like that's important. You sure you can go we've done a lot of like things in days, like the Chop Life cover, or like even the Dying for Nash, that was a Molola cover, the Dying for Nash cover, or like there are a lot of things. Also because Ib is West African himself, so you get that. But I think it's more beautiful that there's a magazine in West Africa made by, someone that was born and raised there, that's doing that thing, and can showcase what's going on in their community there. I think that's great. Um, I love what all the running clubs, like Panel Running Club, Tobes, and um, even like down to the Receipts podcast, shits and gigs, like anyone just doing something,
Right.
I'm down for it. Neef, that book is so important. Neef's book, Where We Come From, which is like a history of British rap, UK rap, from like the 60s or 70s up until now, documenting that. It's like so important.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And he's also a brilliant writer.
Yeah.
He's like so good. Same for Jason and his book documenting black gay men in London, in Brixton in particular, on like one street. That's incredible. It's just not, it doesn't exist. Well, now it does, but didn't exist.
Yeah.
That's so important. Doing great things. I just love anyone doing anything, really. Just like do your own thing and have an interest. And like Joe McDermott at Victory Lab and all the kind of rappers doing their thing. I remember that which issue was it? I think it was the issue before the British issue. They're all just a blur. But there was a story where we did like UK R&B-esque boys. I say esque because Tendai is kind of in between and does whatever But we did Nipper and Jim Legacy and Tendai as like this portfolio of like up and coming people. But initially it was meant to be a UK rap thing. It's meant to be all the kind of up and comers. It's meant to be the Lens, the Ashbecks. It's meant to be all of that kind of crew. But I was just like, there's so many of them. I just, it's too much. So it became that. but I love seeing it. That is amazing. Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a handful. That's enough to be inspired by.
I'm trying to think of anybody else. I don't know. Just anyone. Anyone. Yeah. Just anyone doing their own thing. I love.
Amazing. Is there any questions for Kacion?
What's your take on the contribution of culture in the human experience? So the culture that's discussed in the magazine.
Yeah.
What is contribution in the human experience, and how is it advancing?
I think what we do with Dazed and culture is we make people interrogate and question things. That's what we want to do. We highlight it, we interrogate it, we question it, and we spotlight it. And I think, we just start conversations, and that's kind of our role. I feel like that's what we do. I don't think we can, like earlier was said, I don't think we should be defining it. It's not something that we should be defining or saying this is hot, this is not. It's more just like, this is what's going on in Sao Paulo, and this is what's going on in Delhi, and this is what's going on in, I don't know, Czechoslovakia. There's a story we're looking at, but we don't want to say like, this is the best person. Although sometimes we might believe this is like someone that we think is great, of course. But, it's just we're championing the culture, that's all. Yeah.
Is it freeing people? Is it building more resilient human beings? Is it what is it doing? What's
just telling stories, chronicling. So it's there in 10, 20 years, it will be there. Whether there's a cover or a story, it's like it's in print, it's there. Like it's so important to document things. That's also why I love what Jojo does. Documentation is so important to him, and it's so important to me as well. Because if like the internet was to shut down tomorrow, like how, what do we have? And how do we document that? And like you think about things in history, the first kind of places they're trying to like, when you're trying to get rid of a culture, you're trying to like erase it, you burn a library down, you get rid of their books. And it's also an education, like Days in education. You can go in there and read about, like I was mentioning earlier, you can go and cross, like there's stories about Tiara, who's one of our contributing editors, who crossed the border in Gaza and wrote about it. And you can get that in Days. And then you can also get, the Iranian morality police like protests, and you can get really like political stories that can educate you, and you can also get really silly stories, because that is also just when you're young, things are just silly and they're frivolous and they're not serious, but there is some severity to it as well. I think that's what Days does. It should have a bit of everything, and it should contribute. And maybe somebody doesn't want to pick up the Times, maybe they want to have an opinion that isn't kind of informed by that kind of media. They want like a youthful spin on it or a youthful take on it, and they can get that in Dazed. Yeah, that's my answer.
We've got one question for Kacion.
It's a bit long-winded.
Okay.
So I'm Nelson. I run a digital platform called Nine Bills.
Major.
And something you touched on was how you done the shoot with Doja Cat, and that kind of resulted in this Illuminati thing, and that album come out. So although you didn't try to dictate culture, there's like a timeline of how you done it. So we've had like lots of similar instances where, for instance, we posted Dave's birthday party, and people were like, "Oh, it's Dave, he's Dave, like he's so weird, he's Dave." Then one year done like a skit on it and like tagged us and this kind of stuff, and then it kind of spiraled on. It wasn't intentional. So my question is, how intentional is that, or is it just like something you can pick up on like retrospectively?
Never intentional. We just kind of do it. Doja Cat thing was, the creative was just around what she'd been speaking about. And she was on set just moving. I think it was like 11 a.m. and she was like taking shots of just like whiskey. She was there for a good time. And so she was just moving. And that's the vibe of the set. You want them to feel comfortable, and that's what she was. And so the pictures turned out. And obviously people don't have that context, so they weren't there. So they just see what's online. They're like, why is her eye covered? What's all of this going on? And it's like, what is this? But that's all it was. And then people will say things, and that has a reaction. It's just like a domino effect. I don't think we plan anything. we just kind of respond to people that we like in culture and tell kind of exciting stories in exciting ways. Trying to think of anything else that kind of spiraled out of anything. No, I think that's the only one that comes to mind. That's the only one that comes to mind.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Emery and I work in music and journey has been really inspiring to hear about. And my question is less about just days, but more about you as a person. Like I feel like I can always want to do loads of stuff and get bored easily. And I think that's just the nature of being a creative. And I feel like you have that same energy in your journey, it's just like doing loads of bits. But I think been at days for a minute. So I want to know like how you find satisfaction as a creative, kind of staying in one place. And then the second question is, you said you went to CSM, but what else you do at the minute?
Fashion communication, fashion journalism. Cool. Yeah, at St. Martin's. And then I think with Days I just have so much freedom. So we can just do whatever we want, really. So I don't get bored because like this issue's got this theme, the next issue's got that theme, and we're able to have fun and tell a bunch of different stories. So I'm never bored because I can always tell any story, which is nice. There's just that complete freedom. And that's, yeah, I don't really get bored. I don't really get bored. Yeah, I just, with freedom. Yeah, I'm fortunate.
Yeah,
go on. I don't know. I don't know. This is the dream and I went for it. I don't know. Maybe working in music. Maybe working in music, or I don't know. I don't know. I don't really think about those things. Yeah, well, I just think about I'm more future facing. Yeah. I don't really think about what if like, no, I'm more like, how can I get to here? That's like my listen. So yeah. You're welcome.
Yes.
Yes, I'm James and I work alongside Nelson. So I write for his platform. I do like freelance business here and there. But I've always like wondered like the proper professional way to pitch yourself as a writer to places. And, like setting out a portfolio, that sort of thing. Like, is there a particular way to approach it?
I think it's difficult for me. I'm often on the hunt for writers, and I don't necessarily have a kind of like you have to write here or there. I just think have a good portfolio of work, and when you're pitching, pitch for something quite like, or pitch a story that's quite specific, or pitch something that you have got prior examples of doing well at. So like when the editor's looking at it, you can see, oh, right, they've done this, they've done that. I can imagine them doing this quite well. I can see how it works. You can have like a breadth of different experience in your writing and showcase that in a portfolio, but always have like this is my thing, whatever that might be. Sending emails. Sending emails. If you can approach someone like in person, that's always great. It's tricky.
How does someone get on your radar?
Me just reading what I read. I read all the different magazines and newspapers, and if I like someone, I'll like, great, like put this name down in our database. And also my editor, Jack, he finds people, and I'm like, okay, great, and then this person should do this, and that's kind of that's how we do it. Yeah, but I think just have a portfolio, not too much. Whenever you're also pitching in the email, don't have like a big chunk of anything. Just like be really concise and direct and like, hey, like introduce yourself. I'm so and so. I'd love to write a story about this. Here's some of my experience. See ya, And it's like that, and just make sure everything's kind of linked. And it's like, okay, great, because I can like just skim read that. If you send like a whole thing and you've got like 90 emails to get through, I'm just gonna be like, woof, this is, And that's kind of the reality. You get a lot of emails and a lot of kind of requests for things, and if you make it easy for someone to just consume it in that moment, then they're kind of one step ahead. Yeah. You're welcome.
Final question. Yeah.
I think my question is,
coming from a creative perspective, as a creative, what's the balance of that you've had within your creative journey of distancing yourself from the work that you do? Because I do imagine myself as a creative, there's always that challenge of pulling yourself away from the work that you're doing. Because now it's a job. So how do you recharge or distance yourself from being heavily consumed?
I don't really. I don't.
Is that a fault through your own, or is that just a mindset you need to have?
Perhaps it's a fault. I don't. But I also love what I do. So even when I'm not working, I'm still reading newspaper. It's work though. I'm still reading a book, which is still work. I love reading. I love writing. So even when I'm not doing that for work, I'm doing that for pleasure. So there isn't much of a separation. I also work with my friends. So we can go for dinner and be talking about, I don't know, someone's dating life, and then it's like, oh, but by the way, the cover, like, have you found out about the cover? Have you found out about? And there's like it's something that is very real. It's like there isn't much of a separation between the work and personal life. I'm not sure I'm mad at it. I think I can definitely find ways to take a break because I have been burnt out many times. But yeah, I don't think there's much of a difference. That's not good advice though. That's just my truth. That is just my truth.
Oh, one last one. One last one.
Yes.
He's stretching.
Where's this balance of like getting to the place that you imagine you get to, thinking about what is the next step? Like how do you think about pursuing your next step?
I don't know. I kind of, everything's just happening all at once. What I think about is making sure I'm doing things in the present that will, positively influence the future. So the stories that I'm doing and, like just the quality of work and the level of work and the amount of work and making sure that I'm always thinking, will this like serve me well? It serves me well now, but will it also serve me well in the future and something that I may want to do in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, whatever. I think that's kind of how I navigate it. I just make sure what I'm doing now serves a future Kacion. Yeah, that's my answer to that one. This is fun. Wow.
This is amazing. I think there was one at the back.
How do you see, or what do you see the impact of AI and the shift away from print impacting your role and what you do?
I don't know. I think people are just so hyped about AI. I just like. I think it's going to affect people like copywriters, where like things are quite like the writing is meant to be quite automated anyway. But like, who would want to read like an AI interview of like, I don't know, it's like Beyonce or something? It'd be interesting maybe once or twice, but there is just something, that you can't really replicate about like a human writing. There's like a poetry, there's a prose, there's, you know, um, the human mind. And I think AI definitely helps. It's something that will assist in certain things, responding to emails. Like I see how it's so like monumental and can change things, but I don't necessarily fear it. I think we should speak more about how we're going to utilize it in what we do rather than like how it's going to replace certain things. Yeah, I think there's been a lot of like AI covers you see and all these kind of things, and it becomes a bit gimmicky. I think the reality of it is how is it going to just further what we're already doing and not necessarily take over what we're doing. I don't want to shoot it down because I think it's definitely going to like have an influence and it's definitely going to have an impact. But I think there's been a lot of kind of scare tactics and scaremongering around it. Or maybe not. Maybe I'll be jobless in a year. Who knows? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. On that note, I think to touch on that, yeah, AI can definitely play a part in being a tool for all of us, but it can't do what you just did today, which was telling a very personal story, explaining kind of where you came from. So I just want to say thank you, Kacion.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being super open, super honest, and giving your perspective. And thank you all you guys for coming as well. Really, really appreciate you coming down. Like I said, I've done a handful of these so far. So the first one was Upstairs 180 with Katie Lubin. Then we did another one with Aston Martin, F1 at White City, and then we have Kacion. If you want to find out more about what I'm working on, what we're doing at Voices of the Culture, the website is cultureisdigital.com, or you can follow at Voices of the Culture as well on Instagram. Guys, thank you so much. Thank you.